Hello and welcome to another episode of the Don't Give a Rip podcast.
Got pulled over by the police for speeding.
Oh my God.
Andy, for some reason, decides he wants to flip the car. So he's there flipping this little Fiat.
And he went, Fitzy, he said, you need to retire.
No, I look back on that time in Wales, it was pretty remarkable period of their life.
The All Blacks are expected to win, and not only expected to win, but to do it with panache.
By the time I got offered a contract, I'd already signed for France.
We found him unconscious in someone else's tent.
Hey mate, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. Yourself?
Not too bad, thank you very much. I was actually trying to mess around and get my other camera working, but I'm uploading something at the minute, so
right, that's fine.
As long as you're all right with the mess in the background.
No, it's fine, mate. It's not. I got pictures of my family. There's not much of a mess in the background. How are you doing, bud?
Yeah, mate, I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, busy one today. The foundation, our first fundraiser's going live.
Yeah.
And oh, mate, it's great. I love it. I love it when there's something to do, but there's always 100 other things to do when it's ready to go. So It's all right.
Right, but firstly, Greg, congratulations in order for the victory at the weekend over the Scarlets. I saw you started at Loosehead. Is that one of the best performances that you've been part of since joining the Dragons from Leicester?
Yeah, I think for us, we're in this period of time where we've been challenged with what the Rainbow Cup is for us, and really it's about continuing that momentum from the last few league games that have gone pretty well. But Dean wants to give some of the young guys a go, but without just sending them all out together and not providing necessarily a good, stable base for them. So I think, no, it wasn't the best performance because, we did lose a bit of focus and direction before half time. But look, we just put 50 points on Scarlets that are a quality outfit. So I think there's lots of bits of our game that are really starting to come together. But I think the way that you look at these things is never, oh yeah, that's what we're looking for. It's like these tiny little nuances that is who we are. This isn't who we are. And then you kind of go all in on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And what's it like from a player's perspective with this Rainbow Cup? There's been talk in the media over the last few weeks. I know the season ended to cater for the Rainbow Cup. So everybody thought, get the South African side. It'd be a great sort of curtain raiser prior to the British Lions tour. How's it been from a player's perspective to go through all this nonsense?
I think, to be honest, at heart, we're all rugby players that just want to play rugby. For me, myself, I've not been as injury-free as I would have liked to have been in my first season at the Dragons. So I'm just delighted that there's a few more games that I can hopefully contribute in. But we all have our individual motivations towards those games. So, as I say, for me, I want to get games for the Dragons and take that into next year. There's young guys that are trying to prove themselves and have a shot at being more regular next year. And then we've got boys in our team who, are trying to put their hands up for Lions, and, they're going to need to get some game time under their belt to go on tour. So I think what you have to do is, take whatever your personal motivation for that game is, as opposed to, we want to win the Rainbow Cup, whatever that is. You know what I mean? Yeah. Of course, that'd be great. But it's there's a bigger picture, bigger story at play, I think, would be my take. I don't know if that answered your question, but it sounded good, so keep it.
I'm supposed to be the journalist here. but you're sort of gaining momentum now over the last few weeks. I think I checked the results over the last maybe 10, 15 games, and you went on an 8-match losing run, but now you've won 4 out of the last 6. And it should have really been 5 with that game against Northampton. It was an incredible game. You took a big lead in Northampton, come back, obviously. Is there a big buzz around the camp at the minute, with the last few weeks winning these games and getting that field back into the squad?
Yes and no. I think don't get me wrong. It's not a rugby environment is not a nice place to be when you're losing games. I know you're going to ask me about Leicester later on, but that wasn't the best environment to be in when you're 11th, and you just can't seem to buy a win. But I think the way that we're coached, not just by Dean, but by Crossy, our defence coach, Naz, our forwards coach, Mev, the scrums, and Rossi doing our attack, is we don't really ever stay still. And I'm sort of thinking about my answer as I'm giving it to you, because it doesn't feel like there is like this great big buzz. Of course, like we're all really happy that, we've sort of turned the results around and whatever, but we don't get in on a Monday and go, brilliant, all the pressure's off and whatever, because the pressure was never on. Yeah. If you know what I mean? The pressure was on from ourselves and our own want to be better and to perform. And we're continually kind of mixing up how we're training and stuff anyway, which, to be honest, I find quite difficult sometimes. I'm like, tell me exactly what you want me to do in this exact instant. Yeah. But we just sort of, I don't know, a bit more fluid, I guess.
Yeah. Well, how do things differ from your time at Leicester? Because I think Dan Biggar came out the other day and said about, I think he was on another podcast and said the Gallagher Premiership is so far ahead of the Pro 14 in terms of intensity and physicality. And I think then the same week that he said that, Ulster knocked Northampton out of the European Challenge Cup, which made everyone laugh. But what's the differences between the two? Because I think as a Welshman, you watch these regional games and then you watch the Gallagher Premiership games, you can see a big difference.
Well, what difference do you think you see?
I think there's more entertainment. There's more physicality. I think there's bigger forwards in the Gallagher Premiership. You might completely disagree, and I think just an overall spectacle is much more better in the Gallagher Premiership. There's more tries. The crowd's far better, in my opinion. I know there's no crowds there at the minute, but you can turn over and watch Gloucester against London Irish, and there'll be a packed crowd down at Kingsholm. Whereas, the Cardiff Blues, I remember Pontypridd, they were a semi-professional side a few years back, had more of a crowd on the same day than Cardiff Blues did against Zebra.
Okay, so, there's a few things to unpack there. So one of the interesting things that I've been learning about since coming to the Pro 14 has been regional rugby and the effect that that's had. And I think a lot of those tribal local clubs feeling as though their histories are forgotten and being represented by a region is certainly something that is going to impact people turning up to games. But would the Dragons have a bigger crowd if they were in quarter and semi-finals of Europe? Yeah, they probably would. Yeah. So you can make the argument that there's this tribal instinct and, Ponty, Caerphilly, Newport, why would they support a Newport-based club when, they've got their own histories? I was recently told, like, Caerphilly were in a European semi-final or something like that.
Yeah, a few years back.
But, the way and bear in mind, I'm not a Gwent local, so it's a really difficult thing to sit on. But as a region, I'd like to think that all of that history is something that we can celebrate and that we can represent the whole region as part of the Dragons, and how we develop community relationships is going to be really important to do that. But equally, on a really black and white basis, people want to come and watch a winning team, don't they? So it's really important that what we do at the Dragons is a type of rugby that people want to come and watch. And you mentioned the last few games, watch us rip into Northampton for the first 70 minutes. Like, we're playing some really, really good rugby. So that's the type of thing that people want to see. So I think you've got kind of two sides of the same coin. And then I think the other, just a flat out and out comparison of Premiership versus Pro 14, it is different. I can't tell you what's better or worse. Certainly the Premiership is a lot more physical. I don't know why. Packs probably are a bit bigger. but it's a much more set piece focused game. So we, just the amount of time that teams spend on set piece or trying to play off set piece is a lot less in Pro 14. But one of the things I noticed about the young front five coming to the Dragons is, in terms of rugby players, catch, pass, evasion, run to space, general rugby skills, miles ahead of young front five players in the Premiership. However, top level, you obviously have to do your basics first, but the Premiership is a game built on basics plus, and the Pro 14 has started with plus and is catching up with the basics. And I think that made me think of something else that was worth mentioning on Pro 14 versus the Premiership. I was talking about set piece and young lads. It will come back to me.
They're saying the concussion kicking in, is it?
Yeah, no. I'm very fortunate to have not struggled a great deal with that, but I've got some close friends who have had to retire as a result of concussion, and it's tragic. And I do think it's one of those things that everybody's trying to do the best they can. Unfortunately, it's one of those unknowns that, inherently we do play a very physical, arguably stupid game. So, we need to find some answers to it pretty quick. Who that responsibility lies with, I don't know. That's what I was going to say on the regional thing. Is that if you look at how Wales have performed since regional rugby, Welsh rugby has blossomed. It's been so good in comparison to regional rugby. So it depends how you're measuring it. So if regional rugby is to benefit the Welsh national side, you could argue that it has. But if the goal was to get more people through the gates at regional games, maybe it hasn't. So I think it depends on how you're measuring it. That was what I was going to say.
Very good point. But during your career, Greg, you played under the likes of Lynn Jones at London Welsh. You played under Rob Baxter at Exeter and Richard Cockrell. But where does Dean Ryan rank amongst those guys?
Oh, he's the top. Well, I have to say that because you never bite the hand that feeds you. No, Dean's great. And actually, from a rugby perspective, obviously he's a very clever man, and you can't kind of argue with everywhere he's been. But, I think the things that matter to players is how they treat you as a person. And I've been just really impressed with how he's treated me. I've been so disappointed with being injured and just not being able to contribute as much as I would like to have done. And there's never been a conversation of what the fuck's going on, why are you injured again or whatever. He's just wanted me to contribute in whatever way I can, whether that's with the young lads or whether that's speaking in a meeting or whatever. And so I think, rugby aside, I think as a man manager, I've been nothing but impressed.
And when we talked earlier about regional rugby versus the Gallagher Premiership, it sounded like you knew your stuff, and it sounded like you'd done a lot of research prior to going to the Dragons. Is that the case? Did you want to know everything about regional rugby before coming over to Wales?
Well, no, honestly. It's something I found out since being here. Like I would like to think I would like to learn things, and I've just talked to the coaches, the Welsh coaches, and talked to the boys. So what is the difference? What's happened? Tell me about the history. It's just, I think, a personal interest. But I think, I did look at coming over to Wales a few years ago when that was a possibility of representing and all the rest of it. But I think when I had my very first meeting with Dean and Rob, who deal with the recruitment, they sort of said, forget everything you've heard about the Dragons for the last 10 years. This is what we're doing. And it's sort of, then I didn't have any questions on what had happened before. And it was just kind of, right, okay, so this is what we're doing. I mean, the two best salesmen in the world. But no, I think, you know, the best thing about Welsh rugby is how passionate and loyal the fans are. And I think when you talk to anybody, you know, like I live in Monmouth and I'm on the border with England and Wales, and there's a village just down the road that is literally split half and half. And, you know, it is quite tribal in that instinct, and you can't help but just being fascinated really with, you know, so who is your local team? Well, it's Monmouth. Oh, right. So what about the Dragons? Well, no, that's Newport. You know, but it's like, well, no, the Dragons is everyone, isn't it? But I don't know. There's no right or wrong for me, is there? I'm just, I suppose, a bit naive.
Yeah, well, it's the same with where I am. So I'm based in Rydfel and Pontypridd, but, you know, it's 12, 15 miles to Cardiff. So a lot of the players that, you know, come through the academies at the Cardiff Blues are from Pontypridd, Merthyr, you know, those sort of surrounding areas. So it is very much split down here as well. You know, down the years, you know, at every Ponty game when you're younger, you know, I'll never be a Blue. Now, that's the song that goes round. And it is a lot of hatred around Pontypridd for Cardiff Blues. It's really weird.
So, I mean, I know you said earlier that you're the journalist, but what's the solution then? What do we do? Do we get rid of regional rugby and just go to a league?
Well, if you talk to anyone around you, you know, I've had David Moffat on the show, who created regional rugby in Wales in 2003, and obviously he created the Celtic Warriors, which was Pontypridd and Bridgend put together, and they were one of the best region at the time, and they disbanded after a year because I think there was the fact that they couldn't lose Cardiff because they're the capital city. Even though they were the worst out of the regions at that time, they couldn't get rid of Cardiff. So they got rid of Celtic Warriors, and they used sort of Pontypridd as a base to sort of feed players through to the Cardiff Blues. So I think that's where the hatred comes from, that they lost that regional rugby. But then it's really weird where, you know, Pontypridd will play on a Saturday maybe, and they'll have players playing on that Saturday, but then the next weekend they might get called up to the Blues. Whereas you're supporting them on the Saturday, those same players, but you're totally going against them the week after. Is a really weird kind of scenario that we're in.
So if the Blues, or actually I shouldn't talk about the Blues, but if, say, the Dragons had pathways with those regional clubs and it was a really well-engaged community, does that solve some of that issue, as opposed to just feeling like it's nicked your players and then you're left to...
I think it would, but there's always been a rivalry between Pontypridd and Cardiff anyway. I think, you know, every boxing...
This is what I'm starting to learn, is that you cannot remove that area versus that area.
Yeah, and you know, you have the cynics that would say, let's get back to, you know, 12 Welsh sides, have Caerphilly in there, have Neath in there, have Swansea, have Newport, all these, you know, these great historical clubs. But WRU haven't got the money for that. So that's why the regions were made in the first place. And as you said earlier, you know, Wales have won 2005, 8, 12, 19. They've won 4 Grand Slams in 16 years of regional rugby. So it isn't doing bad, is it?
Well, I think this is it. It depends what you're measuring. And I think, but that's not to say that you can just ignore it and just say, oh, so it doesn't matter because it's only about Wales or whatever. Because obviously there are passionate, you know, tribal people that want to see their region do really well. So I don't know what the answer is, to be honest. But I don't know if anyone does.
No, if you did, that'd be a really good podcast. Yeah, we'll have a good podcast.
Yeah, let me jot that down. Answer to regional rugby. Okay. I'll come back to you.
Brilliant. Send me an Instagram message.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure, Greg, we'll talk more about the Dragons later on in the show, but I'd like to talk about how the move to the Dragons come about. You know, you look at articles on you and some of the players that were involved at Leicester that left last season. You sort of been described as pay cut rebels, which I thought was very unfair. But were you saddened by the way things ended at Leicester Tigers?
Yeah, I mean, obviously can't divulge too much detail, but in terms of leaving a club that you spent 5 years of your life at, made some friends for life, my children, when they were with me, started school in that area. And also on a personal note, the supporters of Leicester Tigers were incredibly supportive with me personally when I released some personal information. So I think that was the overriding emotion more than anything, to be honest. Like, of course, there's a load of stuff and all the legal bumps can deal with all that stuff. But, when you play for a club, it's more than just turning up to training and playing a game. I really cared about, I still care about the club and my mates there and the people that were so supportive of me. So, yeah, I think that was my overriding emotion, to be honest, was really sad that it ended that way. But the way sport is now and the way, careers are and whatever, I don't have time to sort of dwell on it too much. I know I can be sad about it, and it's served its time, and I'm still in touch with lots of those supporters that have reached out. I'm in touch with my mates there still, and that's fine. And I'm doing well, and they're doing well, and that's fine.
And as I mentioned earlier, I've talked to a lot of Leicester Tigers players in the past, and it's very much a community club, isn't it?
Yeah, I think when I was in the process of signing for Tigers, I was leaving Exeter because I just wasn't playing. And my agent sort of said, "Oh, look, we've got such and such and such and such, and Tigers are interested." And I was like, "Well, I'm leaving Exeter because I'm not playing. I'm now going to go to Leicester and sit behind Tom Youngs and Leo Geraldini, because I was a hooker at the time.
Yeah,
like, why would you do that?" And he just so matter of fact, it was like, if you're a footballer and Manchester United or Liverpool come in for you, you go, because it's the biggest clubs. And then when I met with Cockers and stuff and was like talking about opportunities, obviously Tommy and Leo were going away. It was actually the year of the World Cup when they both came back really early, which was just typical. But I was just sort of fell in love with the history of it, I think, to be honest. And when when you sign for them, somewhere around the corner on my bookshelf, I'll get it in a bit, is like this annual of Leicester Tigers history, and Cockers gives it to you, and you're like, oh wow, this is pretty impressive. Do you know what I mean? You kind of walk past all the stuff that's there, and you do feel that, which is super important, and they should never lose it.
Yeah. When I spoke to Lewis Moody, he literally couldn't fit everything that he'd won with the Leicester Tigers in the podcast. It was impossible. So you're just trying to pick out like key European Cup finals, like 2001 against Stade Francais and things like that. But you couldn't mention them all. But in the last 5 years with Leicester Tigers, in the 5 years that you were there, you won an Anglo-Welsh Cup. But as Leicester Tigers, that's almost seen as a bit of a failure, isn't it? So why do you think there was almost a transitional period during that time? What do you think went wrong?
How long?
Sorry, that's such an open question.
Yeah. Well, we've got, in that 5 years, I had 4 or 5 head coaches. So each of those has a transition period. The way rugby contracts are, it's not like football. You get a new manager, you get rid of the ones you don't want, you bring in new people in, you have to see those contracts through and whatever. So we were always going to be in that transition period. I think, to be honest, first year we were Europe and Prem semi-final, and we played Racing in the semi of Europe at Nottingham, at Not Forest. And we weren't a million miles away from that game. That was when Mage and Cockers were doing it together. And it just kind of felt like we could have built from there and gone forward. I mean, the decisions that were made and who stayed and who go was way above my pay grade, and wasn't privy to any of those conversations. But I think you can't underestimate as a squad what that does. So you're sort of trying to get your head around a whole new way of operating, a whole new way of training, a whole new way of a philosophy, I suppose, of how you're trying to play. But, it's just these things do take time, don't they? Steve's gone in there now and, you're starting to see some fruits of it, but 2/3 into a season. But he's a very pragmatic guy and won't be getting worried about what, people have been saying for the last couple of months. It's all about what they're doing now. And, I think the type of rugby they're playing now is a considerable improvement from where we were a couple of seasons ago, that's for sure.
And you mentioned earlier that you joined as a hooker. Where did the move to Loosehead come about?
Yeah, well, so I actually went hooker, tight head, Loosehead.
Yeah.
And sorry if you can hear my dogs in the background. Basically, I think what had happened was Coley was away. Logo and Fraze were injured, and I sort of plugged the gap at tight head and ended up going well. And Cockers was like, "Oh, well, look, there's a really good opportunity for you here." So I was, great, let's do it. And then exactly the same thing happened the following year where Marcus was injured and we didn't have anyone else. He was like, why didn't you go on that side? And it was just, it was a, I just wanted to play. I wanted to get on the pitch and contribute. So whatever number shirt was on my back didn't really bother me. But I'm certainly settled in at Loosehead now and feel like that's my position. Now, I do think at times, you can struggle with being versatile because you're never seen as a out-and-out starter at one or the other. But, if someone gives you a choice to play in a big game, I'd play at fullback if you want to pick me there. It's your own fault. But do you know what I mean?
Well, your sidestep on Mike Brown showed that you can play there. do you know
so
what?
Glad you mentioned it.
I don't know if you saw that, but on Wales Online, they did like a big piece on it. Did you see that? There was like Welsh qualified prop sidesteps Mike Brown. It was like everybody loved it. It was brilliant.
I'll have to try and find it. I'll put it on my wall.
But one of the props that you were coming up against over the last few years that's now a fully fledged England international is Ellis Genge, and he sort of divided opinions, around the UK of his temperament coming into play, and he's a cracking player. I absolutely love him. His abrasiveness is out of this world. But have people got it totally wrong on Genji? Because probably him better than most.
Well, I don't know. I think the thing with Genji is what you, in some senses, what you see is what you get. But I don't mean that how that might sound.
Yeah.
When Genji tells you something, that's exactly what he means, and he's just a very black and white person, and he's very passionate, and what he wants to do, he wants to do. But he has got that bit in him where if he's running with you at the ball, like he really, really wants to run over the top of you. And that's something that isn't necessarily coachable. Some of the things that Genji has are just natural attributes that anybody would be lucky to have. I used to spend my time going round the fullbacks rather than over them. But I've got a lot of time for Genji, and actually we spent a lot of time together in this period at the end of my tenure at Leicester, where we were sort of talking about potential new union and all this stuff. And the thing with that I think I love most about him is that he'll stand up for what's right. And that means if the young lads are getting a bad deal, I'm not talking specifically about Leicester here, I'm talking about, in general, he will stand up for someone who's being, picked on or whatever. And I just think that's a really great characteristic, to be honest. And I've got a lot of time for the bloke. And actually it was really helpful because I don't understand all the lyrics in rap music, and he was super helpful with that.
He's translating rap music for you.
Yeah, it was funny. We'll have to get him on one time, and we'll get him to do a translation. Did
you see the spat he had with the Beast on Twitter?
I I think I did see. Yeah, he said he needs to be dealt with or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think he'd stand a chance, or?
He can handle himself, Genji Mind. So I don't know. It could be a fundraiser. Maybe he could do it for my foundation. Maybe I'll try and set it up. I'll write that down as well. I've just got to answer this question on regional rugby first, and then Genge versus Beast.
God.
Yeah. 2 of those, yeah.
But would he be in your Lion squad?
Yeah, I think he would be, because I think the thing with Genji is that he offers something different. And if you're going to take on South Africa, who are incredibly physical and just want to, do what they do, their plan, the way they play, you need some people in there that are going to ruffle some feathers. And, I think, why not? Like, what else have we got out of the 4 countries at Lucid that is going to offer us something so different? Obviously Mako on his day is an unbelievable player, but I'm thinking out and out ball carrying, abrasive Lucid. Do you know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you? Not why should you? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
I think would be my.
I suppose I think Warren Gatlin's a very certain character that would pick certain players, wouldn't he? So I think are you doing a bit of self promotion with it? I thought it was one of your cans.
I wish.
I thought that T-shirt was one of your cans as well.
Yeah, it is.
Is it? Oh, yeah. I was looking online yesterday, and they look really good. I need to get some. I like how you've put the meals that you should have with them as well.
Tasting notes is crucial.
But basically, sorry, my Siri's just come up. Sorry. So Warren Gatlin's the type of character that would only pick certain players, wouldn't he? So hopefully he gets in, and maybe you might get in. You can cover all 3 positions in the front row.
Yeah, well, if you're listening, Gats, I am available. I'm not sure if you've lost my number, but
I've got his number. I can send this to him. Don't worry.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I don't know, to be honest, but at the end of the day, he'll be selecting and preparing a team that he wants to win against South Africa. It's not going to be whose face fits or who's the best for media coverage or whatever. Gats has been around the block enough that no disrespect, he probably doesn't care what you think about who he's picked for the Lions store. So, ifs and buts and pots and pans.
Well, we're talking to Gats. I'm surprised you haven't got his number. Didn't he come up to you to try and get you to play for Wales?
This is a long story, this one, but
take it away.
Yeah, I was trying to think sort of really what I can divulge, but I am Welsh qualified, but after a rule change through the High Court, because my grandmother adopted my mother as a baby. My grandmother was Welsh. It was the only, other than my dad's mum, was my only grandmother, if you know what I mean. So until I found out my mum was adopted, I assumed I was Welsh. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not something you really talk about at the dinner table. Like, oh yeah, your mum's adopted. Like,
so when did you find that out?
I would have been, I don't know, 10 or 12 or something like that.
I thought you found out when you were about to play for Wales.
Oh, no.
I thought that would have been a surprise.
Mum, you never told me. What's going on? But yeah, no, it was incredibly flattering to be offered the opportunity. But I think, unfortunately for me, it came at a very difficult time personally. And I was kind of so busy sorting my personal life out that I don't think it would have been, A, I don't think I would have done myself justice, and B, I wouldn't have done Wales justice either. So just carried on as was, and is something that I regularly question myself whether I should have just gone anyway. But I think if you're going to go into something like that, you need to be absolutely prepared to give it your best shot, and I don't think I was in a position to do that at that moment in time.
Yeah, but well, you mentioned earlier that you've gone through a bit of an injury problems over the last few months, but you're in the prime of your career at 31, going as a prop. Is there still time for you to get that Welsh cap?
Well, if he's still got his number, it's worth letting him know. No, I'd like to think so, and that's why one of the reasons I'm so pleased to be here in Wales and putting my hand forward. But I know this sounds like an absolute cliche, but all I'm focused on is trying to perform at the level I know I can and that Dean wants me to for the Dragons. Because these things come if you get that right. So whilst it would be great and it's lovely to talk about, there's some quality loose heads in Wales that I need to get ahead of them in pecking order first anyway. So it's not really worth me wasting my time thinking about too much if it's not going to, fruition.
Well, I just said you're in the prime of your career as a prop, but it hasn't stopped you from thinking about life after rugby with your very own beer business. It's called People's Captain. I'll put a link in the description below as well. And the beers, as I said earlier, look absolutely amazing. Firstly, where did the idea come from?
Because I drink beer. What
a stupid question.
Yeah, well done. No, I think I sort of got sponsored by this pub group when I was playing for Leicester, and we sort of had this chat about doing a beer to celebrate the People's Captain joining the pub group, and they didn't brew, so sent me down to this local couple, Andrew and Andrea Reed, who, if you ever get the chance to try Charnwood beers, absolutely fantastic. And sat with Andrew to sort of talk about what beers I like, what we want to do. And, I don't know if you've ever done it at a brewery, but you ended up, you're sort of looking at all these empty bottles thinking, I've got to get home. So we made this American Pale Ale and it was absolutely beautiful. Like, I genuinely couldn't believe that we'd got these ingredients and made this thing that was I would choose over any of the other beers that I'd had, and I felt like I had a hand in it. Well, really, I just emptied bags of stuff into a mash tun when I was told to, and it sort of, the launch night came at the same time when I'd done this article about where I'd been with my mental ill health. And we did this launch night, and I'd not really kind of thought about the two things. And it was Manu and I were sort of taking over the bar, and Manu's giving away far too many free pints and drinking too many himself. And everyone was kind of saying, "Oh, the beer's amazing, thanks so much." But just about your article, like, thanks so much. It's really helped me start a conversation with so-and-so, or my brother, or my daughter, or my niece. Or I've been feeling like that, and whatever. And it kind of got me thinking, for me, when I was in my tough times, I'd ring Jay up, my best mate, and be like, let's go for a beer and just open up and talk about how I was feeling. And I didn't need him to try and fix anything. I just needed to get it off my chest and talk about how I was feeling. So I'd kind of like, well, drink, like, beer and pub life is such a part of British culture. What if we made it count? So I was like, well, we'll make these beers and it will support a foundation that will then put money towards stuff. But that was obviously years down in the pipeline. I wanted to sell it at Welford Road, so I needed Everard's to say yes. They said no, but then they said that they'd brew it. So I did some brews with them, but they were never going to be like a retailer and, do stuff like we're doing now online. And so then coronavirus came and kicked us all in the nuts. And I just thought, well, let's do it. Let's do a D2C e-com business. And we set up the People's Captain Foundation, where we will raise £1 million by hell or high water to support initiatives that encourage action. So, the raise awareness movement has been absolutely fantastic. But I think my big worry is the more awareness we have, the more we need actionable ways of people to find help, or they know what to do and how to navigate and get themselves to where they need to be. So this Friday, the great Richard Hibbard is shaving his head for
Really?
for the cause. So that will be going out this Friday live. And to start with, our first two charities we're going to be supporting is Samaritans and Young Minds, just because COVID has just absolutely stretched Samaritans' resources to a level you wouldn't believe. And children and young people have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. And I think they're our future, and it's really important that we support them through this time. And we'll definitely support more. We'll try and do as much as we can. But the beers are great. We've won a couple of awards, but it's not just flogging cans of beer for me. Like, you'll get a box of beer, you'll get a signed little, hope you enjoy the beers, that's handwritten by one of the team. You'll speak to us, you can jump on our Discord, you can talk about what you paired the beers with. It's a real community that we're building, and I think it's so much fun.
Yeah. And I've read a few articles where, you've been quite open about your depression and anxiety, I believe. And I think there was one part that really stood out for me was, because, I think a lot of us, who maybe watching or listening to this, myself included, have been through depression or anxiety at some point in our lives. And you do get to that point where, well, me certainly, I was drinking on my own as well. And I think that's what you said in one of your articles. And I'm sure many people listening to this would resonate that with themselves. What would your sort of advice be to them who are maybe listening to this and going through a tough time?
Yeah, it's difficult because I think it's really hard to give advice. And I mean that because I take the responsibility of what we all say really to heart. But I think there is always someone that you can talk to. And even if that is me, one of my social girls, you don't have to buy a beer to come and talk to us. We're literally on our Instagram handle, we're on our Discord all the time. But doing it on your own is such a difficult thing to do. And I spent a good amount of months trying to deal with this on my own. And it was only when I then started talking that I was like, oh, right. Like, I do feel a bit better for just getting it off my chest, or there is people that know about this, or by just being a little bit more vulnerable, I think you get back way more than what you give away. And to be honest, the reason I did that article was because I chatted with my mate and he said, well, my mum has been on antidepressants for years, so-and-so's on them. He just reeled off loads of people that I knew that had struggled with their mental health. And it instantly took me from a place of, why am I the only one? No one understands how I'm feeling, all the rest of it, to, oh, this is a massive fucking problem and we need to do something about it. And I was talking to my therapist about it at the time, and she said, genuinely, if more people knew how big this was, we'd all be in a lot better position. Yeah. So I told my agent, and he spoke to David Walsh, who did my article, who defunct Lance Armstrong. And I just thought, if I feel like a bit of a dick for a week or two for being vulnerable, then so be it. But if one person literally thinks, oh, thank God, like I can finally speak about it or go and get some help or whatever, then it's worth me feeling like a bit of a helmet for a bit. And as I say, back to Leicester, you're saying what it was like to leave. Unbelievable support. It was not just from the supporters, but the boys, the club, all so supportive.
And have you been good over the last year or so? Because myself, I've put on a hell of a lot of weight through COVID, but you look like you're in good nick, mate.
I've been through a couple of COVIDs by the looks of it, actually. I'm really fortunate that, for a living, I have to run around and all the rest of it. But from obviously it was fairly stressful leaving Leicester, and it can be fairly stressful trying to set up a charity, and the first person that I tried to use to actually set the charity up ran off with the money.
No way.
The second bunch, we've been trying to get everything live on the website and all the rest of it. But I think you have to just take a big picture of all of it and just be like, we're genuinely trying to do something really good. And thank you for asking. I'm in a good spot at the moment.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure there'll be plenty of orders coming in over the summer with the Lions tour just around the corner, and you've played alongside past Lions, and you're playing with maybe future Lions. Are any of your teammates contenders for this summer?
I think it would be remiss to look past Ross.
He was unbelievable on the weekend, wasn't he?
I think the thing with I feel weird calling him Ross. It's just known as Muzz. And whenever anyone says, "Oh, what about Ross?" Who's Ross? But I think what Muzz does is he somehow makes the game really simple. do you know what I mean? But it feels like it's a really complicated game at times. But when you're as physical as he is, it becomes a lot more simple. And I think Aaron Wainwright he's actually one of my dad's favourite players at the Dragons. My dad's favourite player at Tigers was Coley. And when I came to Dragons, he was like, "Yeah, I like that Aaron Wainwright. The moustache guy looks like he should be in a porno." And I think Wayne is one of those interesting kind of players that he's a deep thinker of the game, if you know what I mean. But again, natural ability, natural kind of touch, timing, space. He's physical, gets it, really good leader, leads by doing. I think our two back row boys would be pretty hard done by not getting in. But then I think it's also remiss to not mention some of our young lads being in with a shout of going on summer tours. I think Ben Carter and Aaron Owen,
he's awesome.
Definitely deserve some time if given the opportunity. I think they've been absolutely outstanding.
It's been funny seeing all different podcasts, James Askell, Mike Tyndall trying to name the Lions squad, and how much uproar it sort of has around the UK. I'm not going to ask you for your squad, but has there been anyone that you've come up against or have watched from a distance that has surprised you and thought they could go on the Lions tour when nobody else thinks they could?
Oh, I think the big one at the moment, everyone's talking about Simo, aren't they, down at Exeter? And obviously he was a youngster coming through when I was there, and haven't played with him for years. But again, that comes down to what kind of game Gats is trying to play, doesn't it? And it's so difficult. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm getting old and I've just got a low tolerance for bullshit now. But it's just like I can't think of what the point would be of how you would waste your time trying to think about who would go and who should go. But if he doesn't go and he gets injured, will he maybe go?
Yeah.
We've still got loads of rugby to play between now and then. And I mean, I don't know if there's any news on George from the weekend, but
it doesn't look good at the minute, does it?
No.
As soon as I saw that, I text my dad, and he's beside himself because George is playing some of the best rugby of his career right now.
Yeah, it's just incredibly sad for him. But that's what I mean, is he would have been a shoe-in for pretty much everybody's Lions tour. But what do we do now? What do we talk about now? You have to come up with another Lions squad.
It's stupid, isn't it?
It keeps you boys busy for a few months, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Gets a few views on YouTube. We'll finish off with the Dragons, Greg. I think you've got a weekend off this weekend, and I think then you play the Cardiff Blues in a few weeks' time. So are you back in training next week, or are you back in training this week?
Yeah, no, we're back in tomorrow. We'll get a good few days under us, just revisit some of those fundamentals, and then we'll be back at it for a full week next week to take on Cardiff.
And the is there only just 2 games that you've got left now, or is there more games after that? Do you play the Scottish and the Irish? You don't know? It's another question.
Yeah, I don't know who we're playing, where we're playing, who's playing for us. No, we've definitely got the Cardiff and Ospreys, and then those other fixtures, I believe, have been confirmed against Glasgow and Leinster. But the Bulls, they've pulled out now, haven't they? The South Africans, they've pulled out.
They've got their own little side tournament now.
The Southern Rainbow Cup or whatever it is. And then, so whether those fixtures get rearranged or not, I honestly don't know.
Crazy.
I don't know if anybody else knows, to be honest.
You couldn't imagine this in the Premier League, could you?
No. Maybe we need to set up a Super League.
Oh,
That's what we need to do. Now we're talking. The Rainbow Cup Super League.
Would Dragons be in it, though?
Yeah. I reckon that's the answer to regional rugby is we create a Super League for the teams from Wales. That could be it, couldn't it?
You've answered it. You've done it.
All right, so what's the next one? Genji versus Beast. I'll text you in a minute.
Well, finally, before you go, Greg, is it okay if we finish with a quick fire round?
Yeah, I'll do my best.
Amazing. Right, so firstly, who's the best player you've played with?
Manu.
Yeah. Do you know what? I knew you were going to say that. So the amount of people that have said Manu Tuilagi, who they've either come up against or played with, is ridiculous.
Yeah, I've done both. And he really hurts to play against. He's great to play with.
Well, who's the best player that you've come up against?
Actually, I got asked this yesterday, and I can't remember actually who I said. But, I mean, I remember playing Leicester in 2013, the last year that they won the Premiership, and it just felt like they were all really good. It was the first game for London Welsh when we got promoted, and we got absolutely buried, like 50 points at home. Yeah, don't know.
The whole of the Leicester team.
So yeah, Leicester Inc.
Best friend in rugby.
They're all my best friends. I would say Matt Tamua, God rest his soul, back in Australia
Back
now.
in
But yeah, me, him, and Lenny are pretty tight.
Yeah. Your favourite coach?
Dean Ryan.
Is he like in the background or something?
He's just around the corner, actually. Yeah.
That's why your dogs are barking.
Exactly. Yeah.
Any pre-match rituals?
No. My pre-match is all quite different, I think.
Yeah, because did you have the same meal or?
Yeah, no, I do this spicy crab chili linguine thing. It's really good. Yeah, it's chili oil, spring onions, garlic cloves. Let that go. Then you want like chili paste, or I've recently started using Induja paste. Let that go for a bit. Chop some little cherry tomatoes up, whack that in there. You know the crab meat that you can get in the supermarkets? 3 or 4 of those. Mix it all up. This literally takes like 5 minutes.
Bloody hell.
Fresh tagliatelle. Cook that in the pot with all the other stuff. Maybe 1 spoon of the pasta water to help it all bind together. Squeeze a lemon juice. Job done.
Bloody hell. You're a man of many talents, Greg. Best match you've been involved in?
You know, you want to think about the ones you've won, don't you? And you've won something. You know, being promoted from the Championship was unbelievable. There was no one there, but that meant a lot to us. Like, we were proper underdogs when we beat Bristol.
The Cornish Pirates?
Pirates it was, yeah. And I'm going to say that, I reckon.
Nice.
You know, obviously, you play Racing in Paris, or you play the French teams or whatever, and it's amazing. But yeah, no, I think I'll stick with that.
Fair play. Worst drinker you've played with?
Worst drinker, Matthew Tate.
Is it really? Is there any story behind there, or?
But no, he's not a bad drinker. He's just tight, so he doesn't want to buy any drinks, and he doesn't want to drink a lot either. Brendan O'Connor actually was a terrible drinker.
I was going to say this is what Gavin Ensign does to people, doesn't it, Matthew Tate?
There you are. I haven't heard that before. Yeah.
Biggest troublemaker on and off the field?
Troublemaker? In what sense? Like bad troublemaker or just pain in the ass?
Well, both sort of. Is there one for each?
Well, I don't know if I can divulge, police inquiries and stuff, to be honest. I don't know. The thing is now I feel a bit old. Like the young lads coming through, they're all trouble. Do you know what I mean?
Really?
Like, yeah, I feel like a parent of some of our young lads that are coming through. No, I can't give you a name on that. I refuse to give you a name.
Just text it to me, all right?
Yeah,
Finally, if you weren't a rugby player, what would be your dream job?
I would have liked to, or if I could do anything, I would love to did you ever see Instinct with Anthony Hopkins in it?
No.
He's like an anthropologist and just sits there and studies like gorillas and stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how long I could have done it for, mind. But I reckon that would have been some life.
Yeah.
Honestly, watch that film. It's fascinating.
Oh, well, I'm a big film buff. But, well, Greg, it's been an absolute pleasure having this podcast with yourself, sharing this hour with you. All the best with the Dragons for the future and of course, with the beer company.
Thank you very much. What I will do is I'll send you over a code so that you can share that with your listeners. And please, if anybody's listening, donate to see Richard Hibbard with his haircut.
Amazing. Can't wait for that. Well, thank you very much. I will be trying some of those beers. Hopefully I can get a good code off, as you just said. But all the best, mate. And good luck for the fundraiser.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Take care.